Liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to build, resupply, and to do research on the International Space Station.
Hi everybody, it's my great pleasure today to welcome Chris Hadfield. He's a Canadian astronaut who's been to space 3 times. Chris, last time I saw you, you were testing my ability to hover a helicopter or not, drive a rover around the surface of Mars. It's nice to see you again.
Lovely to see you. And we also went to the bottom of the ocean together, amazingly enough. And it's great to see you thriving since then. And so many things have happened since then. It's been a fascinating time on Earth, heading towards the moon, and some amazing stuff going on Mars as well.
Yeah, so did you watch Perseverance land last year? Was that a big event for you?
Oh, not just Perseverance, but the little helicopter, you know, the little amazing drone, Ingenuity, I think they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mars has always fascinated me, of course, not just because it's the only red permanent, you know, light coming from the sky, at least one you can see so clearly, but also, you know, when Percival Lowell 100 years ago was peering through his telescope and mistranslating what the Italian observers had seen as canali and thinking he was seeing canals. And then when Ray Bradbury wrote about it in the Martian Chronicles and how there may be a dying, you know, civilization on Mars. So it's always been fascinating to me in science fiction. But I think the reality has even been more fascinating from, you know, the very first landings back in the 70s, right through, as you say, to Perseverance and what we're doing now, finding, you know, that enormous volcano Olympus Mons on the surface, finding holes, you know, that we've seen from orbit, black holes in the surface where there's, you know, some sort of lava tube or place, you know, where potentially we could live. And then all of the landers and rovers that have been licking and touching and photographing and listening for Mars quakes. It's been an amazing time of discovery for Mars. And for me, the most interesting part is, you know, I've always been fascinated with the moon and the universe, but Mars has water and Mars has an atmosphere and Mars has had, you know, tectonic forces, or at least, you know, geological forces at the surface. And by all our guesses, when the Earth was still hot and just forming 4 billion years ago, when the very first little bits of life and blue-green algae were forming here on Earth, Mars was a lot like us. So to me, that makes it just inherently such an interesting and naturally desirable place to go. And when Perseverance is now driving around that old sort of lake delta, where on Earth, as the water spreads and things fall down, that'd be a natural place for us to find some sort of sedimentary fossils. To the fact that we're now drilling down into that very bedrock to look for fossils on Mars and maybe answer the age-old question of, are we alone or not? To me, that's an amazing moment in history. And I'm pretty excited to see what Perseverance digs up and then what those samples teach us.
No, absolutely. I was talking to some Mars scientists actually recently, and they had a really interesting perspective. They said that to them, it would be more interesting if we did not find life on Mars than if we found life on Mars, because thinking again, as you said, about Mars's history, about how similar it was to the Earth all that time ago, it's incredible to think that there couldn't be life there, or that there was never life there, given what we see on the Earth.
Yeah, I see two big choices, or at least two big revelations for us. One, perhaps the easiest, is that there's fossilized, you know, slime or stromatolites or something on Mars. And that means that at least there's primitive life everywhere. You know, you could think about panspermia. Maybe there was a little meteorite blasted off Mars that floated across the millions of kilometers between and survived the re-entry to Earth and moved life from planet to planet. That's possible. But I think more probable is if we find some sort of life on Mars and some sort of life on Earth, then we can maybe have a pretty good guess that all of those little twinkling lights in the sky have potential primitive life, not to know about advanced life. But that would be a comforting and interesting thing to know. But if we don't find life on Mars, then perhaps, as your scientist friends say, well, why not? And just how rare is life? And just how rare is intelligent life? And therefore, how much better care should we be taking of this weird moment in universal history where we have self-aware and spacefaring life here on Earth? Either way, I think it's going to help us have a big mea culpa of self-awareness.
Yeah, and I think over the next decade, we're going to find some of the answers to those questions. So we're in a really exciting time, I think, in terms of space exploration. Looking forward, though, to not just sending rovers to Mars, but sending people to Mars. What are your thoughts about that? Timescales, what kind of people will go, what kind of challenges they'll face?
Well, we have a bunch, just like always, we have technical problems to solve. There's a fascinating recent article in Nature that's talking about looking at DNA analysis and how it is that we as a people moved across the Pacific when our technology finally got good enough and our navigation got good enough that we could actually sail the Polynesian peoples from remote island to remote island. But that wasn't possible until our technology had enabled it. And that's true for cars and for airplanes and for spaceships. And it's still true for getting to Mars. Getting to the space station is relatively straightforward now. Getting to the moon, we did it 50 years ago. It's hard, but it's still within our realm. But going interplanetary, that's still wickedly hard. And we have a lot of problems to solve. And our propulsion systems, it's like a rowboat, trying to get to Australia or something. It's hard. It's possible, but it's dangerous and hard. But we'll get there. And our pace of acceleration, or our pace of invention and therefore exploration is accelerating. So I'm confident we'll get there. People just have to be both tenacious and inventive, but also patient.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I was kind of thinking back to when you first went into space in the 1990s and the kind of skills they were looking for when they were selecting you as an astronaut. And I guess some of the skills they'll be looking for when they're picking people to go on those kind of missions. Are we looking for similar people or are we looking for very different characteristics?
Yeah, I think it'll be the same sort of thing. If actually science fiction and writing, if you read Andy Weir's book, The Martian, or watch the movie The Martian, the type of character that he wrote for Mark Watney, who was played by, what's his name? Anyway, the actor on the surface did a great job.
Matt Damon.
Yeah, Matt Damon, right. That type of character, people like yourself who are deeply educated, physically very strong and active, and have dealt with complex situations, but have a perpetual energetic optimism to try and just solve the problem. That's who's in the astronaut office. It felt very familiar. Andy Weir got it right. The movie got it right. And that's the type of person we're going to need to go to Mars.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see. And in terms of kind of what you're up to now, I mean, you retired from your astronaut career not so long ago, but it seems like you've been doing quite a lot since then. And your latest projects, tell me about it. Tell me about the book that you've just written.
I'm holding in my hand the very first hardcover copy that I have of the Apollo murders. And it's sort of in line with that. What was it like to be an astronaut in the 60s and the 70s? During the Apollo program, and what just might have happened. This is a fiction, a thriller fiction, but as someone who's been in space for months and months and orbited the world thousands of times, it's also a great vehicle to explain what it's truly like and what it, how does life unfold on board, and what do you do when things go desperately wrong? And I chose a whole bunch of true historical events: the secret Soviet space station Almaz, the secret rover that was driving around on Mars on the moon called Lunokhod. And then I built a whole thread of a story in there. And this book, it's already in 12 languages, and people like James Cameron and Andy Weir and even Frederick Forsyth have recommended this book. Like, they should know better. But I think you're going to be enjoying reading this book. It's released to everybody on the 12th of October, and it's in bookstores all around the world. So it was my big project over the last year, writing it. I'm really proud of it, and I think people are going to learn a little bit about space flight and maybe even some lessons for going beyond the moon to Mars, from what life was like for these people in the Apollo murders.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I look forward to reading it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris. It's been a pleasure. My
pleasure. And it's lovely to see you. I'm looking forward to all of us getting healthy after COVID and a chance to see you in person again, Susan.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Come over, come visit. You're always welcome.
Thank you very much. You too.